Hi, good morning everyone and welcome to this Cataloguing with SUNCAT webinar. I'm Zina Mulligan and I'm a Project Officer with EDINA, and I'm just going to be taking you through a few introductory slides about the webinar software before handing you over to my colleague Natasha Abra-Jones, who leads the bibliographic team in SUNCAT. And Natasha will be presenting the webinar this morning, and Maura Whitson, who also works on the SUNCAT bibliographic team, will be answering any questions you submit via the webinar facility. If you can't see the full webinar panel, just try clicking on the red arrow as you can see here in this screenshot. Everyone is muted throughout because we've got quite a lot of attendees. It's better if we mute everyone throughout the session. But if you have any questions, if you could submit these via the question facility on your webinar panel. And only Natasha, Maura and myself as organisers can see your questions, but we will make our responses available to everyone so that everyone can see them. And we'll follow up any questions that we can't answer either during the webinar or we don't have time to at some point after the webinar. And at the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A section where we'll read out your questions that you submit via the webinar facility, and then Natasha will answer them verbally for you. And we'll follow up with you next week with an email containing the webinar slides, a recording of the session and also some useful links. But that's really all I want to say, so I'm now just going to hand you over to Natasha.
Thank you, Zina. Hi, I'm Natasha, and as Zina said, I'm the SUNCAT Bibliographic Project Officer. I'd like to briefly cover what I'm going to be discussing during this webinar before I really get started. So I'm going to talk about contributing data to SUNCAT, what we do with it and why, and how you can utilise the data once it's in SUNCAT, and hopefully how it can improve the efficiency of your serials workflow, and how you can download records from SUNCAT for importing into your local catalogue. Please ask questions. Really, we do mean that. We'll do our best to answer them in the allotted time, but we'll definitely answer them afterwards if we run out. So let me give you a bit of background regarding SUNCAT, which hopefully you will have heard of, otherwise you wouldn't be attending this webinar. SUNCAT is the Serials Union Catalogue for the UK and is a physical union catalogue, and that means we take the bibliographic records and their associated holdings from all of our contributing libraries. We normalise the data and put it all into a single database. We started as a project in 2003 and launched as a service in 2005, so we've been kicking around for quite a while. We have the data of over 100 contributing libraries, as well as the data from CONSER, which is the cooperative online serials programme offered by the Library of Congress, and is also an authoritative source for bibliographic records, documentation and training materials for serials cataloguing. The ISSN register, which is a database of bibliographic records of all the ISSNs offered by the ISSN Centre in Paris, and the Directory of Open Access Journals. Our contributing libraries range in size from having collections of hundreds of thousands of records to a few dozen. So they range from the national libraries, such as the British Library, the National Library of Scotland, through university libraries, such as the collections held in Oxford, Cambridge and so forth, to some very specialist libraries, for example, the Wiener Study for the Library for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide, the Royal Veterinary College, and the NERC Libraries, which is the Natural Environment Research Council. The SUNCAT contributing libraries also have a wide geographic range, from Inverness in the north of Scotland to Cornwall in the southwest of England, and we even have a couple of libraries in Antarctica and South Georgia. So, as I said earlier, we've got over 100 libraries contributing to SUNCAT, and we've tried to make contributing data as simple as possible, and of course there are instructions on what we would like on our website. But however, don't let that put you off. We're happy to accept all sorts of data. We want to make it an easy process to let the library spend as little time as possible on this. So the gist of contributing to SUNCAT is send us the data and we'll do the rest. At the bare minimum, a record will need a title, holdings, and a consistent and persistent local control number. And the last condition is very important, as we use the local control number in the updates process. So an incoming record which has the same LCN and library identifier, we use the MARC organisational code. As a record already in the database will be overwritten. So the LCN has to be persistent so that the correct record is updated. And if the LCN is reused, so has different bibliographic information and holdings attached to it, then a mismatch will occur. And we understand this may not be possible for some libraries, so we do have a workaround, but it's quite long-winded, so we try not to use that one. We prefer the data to be sent to us in the same format across updates, although again we realise that this may not always be possible. And we ask our contributing libraries to send us a file of all their serials records with their associated holdings in the first instance, and then to send regular updates. We accept two types of updates: partial files, which are made up of new, changed and deleted records since the last file sent, or full files, which contain all the serials records, so they're basically the same as an initial file, and then we in SUNCAT work out the new, changed and deleted records. Again, it's whatever is easiest for the library. Update frequency is arranged with the library at the library's convenience and can range from weekly to semi-annually, but this is usually reserved for small libraries who do not make many changes to their data over the time between updates. Many of our libraries set up a cron job to send us data automatically, and this cuts down massively on the time spent on the task of sending us data by the library. And again, it's leave the rest to the SUNCAT team. We'll write a data specification which will be used to normalise the library's data, and there may be a few questions asked about local practices and so forth, but nothing too onerous. And then we'll convert the data, send reports of rejected records. These are records which don't meet our minimum standards, so basically they don't have a holding, a title or a local control number. And then we load the data in. So as you can see, contributing data shouldn't be hard work for the library, and we want, as I keep saying, we want to make things as easy as possible because we know how stretched library staff are. So as I said earlier, SUNCAT is a physical union catalogue, so we ask our contributing libraries to physically send us data. We set up a secure FTP area on the SUNCAT server for each library, authenticated with a specific login, and we do ask for MARC communications files to be sent. Many of our libraries are able to do this, some aren't, so we end up receiving data in all sorts of formats and not necessarily through the FTP server. Some we collect from the library, but we do prefer it if the library sends us data. Some are sent as Word documents, and we have email attachments. We receive Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, CSV files, and the list continues. For those libraries that do not use MARC 21, we create a tailored crosswalk to put the incoming data into MARC before we put it through the standard normalization processes that every file undergoes. And we have to normalize the data so it can be loaded into SUNCAT and create a coherent display. SUNCAT is a hybrid catalogue. It can't really be any other way considering the variety of data that we receive. One of the many standards that we accept is RDA, Resource Description and Access, which was implemented for new records by the Library of Congress and major libraries such as the British Library in 2013, with many other libraries following suit soon after. And as you may already know, RDA builds on AACR2 foundations, but RDA is a new standard for resource description and access designed for the digital world. As more and more libraries adopt RDA for new records, so SUNCAT receives more and more records catalogued according to this new standard. We will, of course, accept them as we would any other record, and that includes hybrid records such that are AACR records with RDA elements and vice versa. The impact of RDA has been noticed in SUNCAT, but it hasn't been unduly painful, as RDA is still currently sort of shoehorned into the MARC format. And as this is the carrier format that SUNCAT uses, the content of the data is not, I wouldn't say it's not irrelevant, but it's not necessarily as fundamental as the carrier is at the moment anyway. So SUNCAT has changed its record display and indexing to accommodate the new RDA elements included in the MARC records. And I'm going to give you a list now which are indexed and displayed in the full display and the MARC record display. So the $100E, the $110E, the $111J, the $264, the $700E, the $710E, and the $711J. We don't index or show in the full display the $245H, which is still used by many of our contributing libraries, even in records which are coded as RDA. And we don't index or show the 336, 337 or the 338, but all of these are displayed in the MARC record view. Some of these new RDA elements, especially the 264 for example, will be included in the new SUNCAT matching algorithm which is being developed at the moment. Sorry, I've carried on and skipped slides. That's the slide I'm supposed to be talking to, sorry. Now for a bit of crystal ball gazing. How will the Ferberized LMS impact on SUNCAT? What will happen with BibFrame and RIMF and any other non-MARC models? For a bit of further information, if you've not heard about this, BibFrame, which stands for Bibliographic Framework, is a data model for bibliographic description. And it was designed to replace the MARC standards and to use linked data principles to make bibliographic data more useful, both within and out with the library community. It's being developed by the Library of Congress, so there's a bit of gravitas behind it. RIMF stands for RDA in many metadata formats and is a visualization tool developed by the company The Mark of Quality to encourage the user to think in pure RDA instead of the combination that we're used to of AACR2 and MARC as content and carrier. It's been the tool used in such exercises as the RSL-a-thon held earlier this month after the JSC meeting in Edinburgh, which was a hackathon for RDA metadata about Robert Louis Stevenson and his works, organised by the Cataloguing and Indexing Group in Scotland, the Joint Steering Committee for the Development of RDA and the MARC Quality. And I think that there's going to be another similar hackathon at ALA at the midwinter meeting this year. SUNCAT at the moment is a MARC-based catalogue, and this won't change for the foreseeable future because I don't think that there are any viable RDA or non-MARC systems that are being used by any of the SUNCAT contributing libraries. And to be frank, there don't seem to be any emerging anytime soon. The SUNCAT carriers are dictated by those of our contributing libraries. So when we start receiving data from any system that is non-MARC and more BibFrame, we'll probably treat it as any non-MARC library for the time being and write a crosswalk to put it back into MARC 21 so that it can be loaded into SUNCAT. But once more libraries start using a non-MARC standard such as BibFrame, we would look at transferring SUNCAT data to something similar. And I think it's also going to be interesting to see how libraries use linked data and linked open data, and if that can be exported in some form to a union catalogue, which needn't necessarily be SUNCAT, obviously, but it'll still be interesting to see how linked open data will affect shared catalogues. So enough of the crystal ball gazing. This is the sort of data we deal with on a daily basis. This is a MARC Communications format file. It's a bit scary if you've not seen it in its native state before, and it's definitely not like anything like the individual catalogue records that you may be more familiar with. But however, we do have a utility that transforms this into a human readable form, but all the normalization processes take place on this file. And this is the data from one of our non-MARC libraries who send us their serials records in a Word document. And from this we can make a crosswalk into MARC and make a catalogue record for each title, which can then be loaded into SUNCAT. So once we've normalized the data and loaded it, this is the result, a record that is matched into an existing set and so has the best bibliographic record on display with all the holdings from all the libraries in the set displaying with the preferred record, as you can see. So I've been talking about data normalization. It's one of the major tasks undertaken by the SUNCAT bibliographic team. Why do we do it? Well, basically, we want all the very, very disparate data that comes to us in a similar form. We want it in a similar form so that we can match it as accurately as possible, considering that the matching is a fully automated process, and make the display as coherent as possible. It also makes it more coherent when libraries download record, as data will be in a more uniform style. We try to follow the Mark 21 format as much as possible, but we have to have some exceptions. For example, we have a textual summary holding statement in an 852.3, which is the only way for our current system to link with the locations details. And obviously, the more homogeneous and more uniform the data, the better the automated processes such as matching and indexing can be. However, even after normalization, there are many records that do not match for various reasons, but all records will have a title and holdings. And this slide sort of sums up some of the issues that the SUNCAT team face when normalizing data from contributing libraries. It's not a complaint in the slightest. It's the reality of library data. SUNCAT looks at the data in a different way from most libraries. We look at the data file as a whole, finding patterns within records rather than looking at them on a one-by-one basis. This means we pick up things that the library itself might not be aware of, legacy practices that should have been removed but are still in some records, for example. There's no such thing as a standard record in the library world, although there are guidelines as to what constitutes a good record. In the serials cataloging environment, this might be the CONSER minimal standard, but however, most data varies from a set standard. Although some records from one library may follow such standards, other records within the same file may follow standards established within the library, such as the old bodily rules that Oxford used to use, or be part of a quick and dirty retrospective conversion project where copying the entry from the card catalogue was more important than having a good record. More recently, we've noticed an increase in the number of records which were supplied free, I put that in quotation marks, along with some journals, and these vary wildly in quality. Some are good, some are not so good. Anyway, this gives you an idea of the sort of data issues that are common to many libraries and definitely in SUNCAT. So in order to normalize the data so that it can be loaded into SUNCAT, we write a data specification for each library tailored to their data. This is done by closely inspecting the data and finding common themes, the pattern finding I was talking about earlier, such as the local control number may be stored in a 907 on export or an 035. SUNCAT uses the 001 for local control numbers, so we have to move the tag. So we have to move them from one tag to another. And there are many more complicated tasks, especially when it comes to holdings. SUNCAT currently uses Aleph as its back-end, so we do the data manipulation based on a combination of some Aleph processes and some Perl scripts written in-house. There are some standard data manipulations that we do for all libraries where appropriate, such as ensuring that the ISSN in the 022 tag ends in a capital X rather than a small one. We try not to get rid of any supplied information unless it is so local that it makes no sense otherwise, such as a string of numbers. Local notes we will identify as belonging to the library. We want to keep as much as possible because after all, what's the point of a library sending us data if we don't use it? Specifications change as we notice changes to the data or the library tells us about changes to the data. But we do try to pick these up where possible. So we see a data specification as a living document and it will change as the data changes. So after all my blethering about what we do with the SUNCAT data, I presume you want to know how SUNCAT can help the cataloguing department within your library, whether that department consists of many people or a solo librarian. First off, SUNCAT is obviously a locate facility to let you know what library holds what, and the holdings are as detailed as the information supplied. We pay special attention to making sure that the holdings are as fulsome as possible, but that does depend on what is sent to us. So we'll include missing information, whether or not a title is a UKRR retained title, and so forth. And basically SUNCAT contains, as I said earlier, the serials records of over 100 contributing libraries, as well as CONSA and the DOAJ, and all of these are visible on the public access view of SUNCAT. It's much easier for identifying runs held by libraries rather than having to search individual catalogues. So if you view a title in SUNCAT, you can click on the library name to show details of that library, and this includes like the address, how to get there, contact details, and the British Library ILL code. The marked records for each title are also available in the web display if you want to check any details. When you get to a record, simply click on the View Mark Record and you'll get the marked view of the preferred record in the set. And the preferred record is the one that contains the best bibliographic information, so should be the first one that you see on display. And the way the matching works in SUNCAT is that all the records match together but are kept separately, but they're linked by the SUNCAT ID, which is stored in the 049 tag and starts with SC, is 9 numbers and 2 check digits. All these records are available for view, as many have local notes or slightly different bibliographic information that may be of interest, may help you make a better match with what you're cataloguing at the time. So to view these, you click on the library name in the locations list of libraries, below the bibliographic information and above the holdings, and you'll get the record for that particular library. And of course, there may be more than one record per library for the same journal title, say a print record and an electronic record. And you can view the marked records for any of the library records as well as the preferred record. And SUNCAT tip, if you lose track of which record you're looking at in the marked view, I know this is borne by experience, look at the 003, which will give you the mark organisational code for the library that the record comes from. And to go back to the preferred record, you simply click on All Libraries link at the top of the holdings. Excuse me one moment. You can use SUNCAT records for a variety of purposes. You can use them for everyday serials cataloguing, as well as for special projects, such as retrospective conversion. And as well as regular cataloguing, we've had a couple of special cases recently whereby SUNCAT has helped our contributing libraries, and we would be happy to do more of this. So one library had lost some records from their system, which meant that they were very difficult to identify as they were no longer in their system, obviously. I suggested that the library send us a file of all their serials records and their associated holdings. And as the library already supplied a full file update, which is a complete dump of all their serials records rather than only the new changed and deleted records since their last update, we could compare the records in the old file and the new file. The records that were in the old file but not in the new file were the lost records. So we pulled those out and sent them back to the library so they could be uploaded back to their catalogue. And the library were very happy with this, as they'd started adding the lost records manually, which was very time consuming, as identification of these lost records was an issue, as well as the time spent recataloguing them. Another library wanted to add LCSH, Library of Congress subject headings, to their serials records without adding them manually. Adding LCSH would achieve consistent description and improved access to resources. And although the catalogue included marked records for all of the serials, library serials, none of the records included LCSH. So the task of upgrading 15 to 20,000 records would have required an awful lot of time and resource, as well as knowing what the appropriate subject headings were. The SUNCAT team provided a Perl script which enabled the automated matching and downloading of records from the SUNCAT MARC record downloading service. So the technical team at the library were able to modify the script so that it retrieved records for titles matching those supplied and held by the library. And they then downloaded the output file to a local server, stripped out all the MARC fields bar the LCSH so that they could be added to the records already existing in the library catalogue. Unfortunately, due to a quirk with the library system, this was not able to be done automatically, and had to be done manually. But regardless of this, the library said that SUNCAT saved them a lot of time, and the one-stop shop aspect of the service was much appreciated. And if you want to know more about this, this is noted as a case study on the SUNCAT website. So SUNCAT records can be downloaded into your local system using Z3950, and I'll explain about this in a bit more detail in a minute. The downloading facility allows you to obtain high-quality serials records, such as those in the CONSER database, which are catalogued to a set standard. And these are considered a benchmark of quality serials records. You can also have a look at the records which have not matched into any set, and these may describe unique titles which have not been widely catalogued, so will save you time from having to catalogue it originally. On the other hand, singleton records may be for more commonly held titles but simply don't have enough data to match in. Again, one of the problems with data quality in serials records. So I've been talking about downloading records, and you probably want to know how to do that. So if you want to download records directly from the web interface, you can email them to yourself, but they won't be in a form that you can download into your catalogue. They're useful for checking bibliographic details and information on what libraries hold this title. You're probably more interested in the Z3950 downloading, which is commonly used by libraries. And as the slide says, Z3950 is a standard which allows machine-to-machine communication and is used in the exchange of bibliographic information from one source to another, so downloading from SUNCAT into your local catalogue. SUNCAT offers two services, a free service and one for contributing libraries, and how to set all this up is on our website. The free service allows you to search SUNCAT and download records in SUTRs, which is simple unconstructed text record syntax, and XML. If you're a contributing library, however, you have more choice of records and can download records in MARC 21, SUTRs and XML. And this access is authenticated with a login and password which SUNCAT sets up for you. There are some definite perks of becoming a contributing library, as well as having your data in SUNCAT and widening your access to your catalogue. You have a wide variety of records to download in a selection of formats across a selection of databases. You may notice that the first one is CONSER. This is a source of high quality bibliographic records, as we said, and they will cover many titles. There are over 1 million records in CONSER, but won't cover everything. The next set contains records from CONSER and the ISSN register. Only contributing libraries can access the ISSN register due to the license agreement we have with the ISSN Centre in Paris. The ISSN register contains all the records which have been signed in an ISSN, and so is another authoritative data source for serials information, and there are nearly 2 million records in the ISSN register. The third and fourth sets contain the data from CONSER, ISSN, DOAJ, which is a directory of open access journals, and 17 contributing libraries, chosen for their breadth of titles and are of good quality. The deduplicated set contains the preferred record only for the match sets. If you want to see all the records in the set, choose the duplicated set. These may have more or different information in the bibliographic record than is in the preferred record. There's also a search tips guide to make searching SUNCAT using Z3950 as easy and painless as possible, giving you more information on the indexes used and the MARC tags covered in Z indexes. records can be downloaded in either Mark 8 or Unicode UTF-8, although all the records are normalized into Unicode. So, if you have any questions now, please write them in the question box. We'll read them out and give our responses verbally. If we don't get around to your question, we'll include it in the information that we put up after this session. Okay, if you have any questions or comments which haven't been addressed during this webinar, please feel free to contact the SUNCAT team. I can tell you we won't bite. In return, I have a question for you, but I'm just being told that there's a question for me now. So.
Yes, we've had a question in. We're getting a few questions in now.
Excellent.
Yes. So the first one is about, can the interlibrary loan be made online or has to be physical? I mean, electronic copies.
I'm going to let Zena answer that one.
That's really up to the library, the individual library, whether they're happy to loan to make copies from their electronic journals, and it depends. I think the copyright these days means that they should be allowed to, but it's really up to whether their local policy means that they will do that. We've got another question then. When we provide details of electronic journals, do we need to include 856s?
Yes, definitely. Yes, please, because we include all this we include all the electronic information, the URL and so forth, and then if the user has access to that, has permissions to link through, they can link through straight through from SUNCAT. If they don't, they'll get a little note up saying you may not have the facility to link through to this title.
Okay, and we've got another question. Is there a cost to being a contributing library?
There's no financial cost to joining SUNCAT. You just have to send us data, so there may be a bit of cost to time in the initial run of trying to sort out the normalization process, but no, you don't have to pay.
I don't think we've got anything else.
Okay,
Natasha.
Right, well that's great, because in return I've got a question for you. We've been talking about downloading data using Z3950. Is this how you'd like to download data? Is there any other method of gathering SUNCAT data that you might be interested in? And if so, would you please share with us?
If you can do that now via the question facility, if you just type in your answer using that now, or please just email us as well after the event, whichever suits you better.
And I have one more question. For those of you who do use the Z3950 service, would you like all the SUNCAT records to be available for download, or would you like selected libraries only with the emphasis on the quality of the record? If you want to go away and think about this, please email us your responses. We're sort of on a fact-finding mission here to try and improve our service. I'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody comes up with any answers.
We're getting some answers.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So far, Z3950 is fine for people, but in the future they may want something more.
It would be really good if we could have an indication of what they would like.
A full download data via FTP.
Right, we shall take that on board and take that away and discuss that.
Could you repeat the questions again?
Certainly. So we've been talking about downloading data using Z3950. Is this how you want to download data? And is there any other method of gathering SUNCAT data that you might be interested in? And would you share that with us? And for those of you who do use the Z3950 service, would you like all the SUNCAT records to be available for download, or would you like selected libraries only with the emphasis on quality?
We've also had a question, is SUNCAT not-for-profit, i.e. would you provide records to something like the ex-Labour's community zone for a fee?
I don't actually know what to say to that. The record, SUNCAT is a free service, but we don't tend to, it's our contributing libraries who really have the access to the records, because that's a perk of being a contributing library.
Yes, our license agreements in some cases only allow us to provide records to our contributing libraries at the moment. But we can maybe send you a more fulsome response
yes.
after this. And we're getting responses in saying, so Z3950 is best for individual records, otherwise email or FTP of MARC files best. And someone said they would like to see all the library's records on
Right, that's
available.
good. Thank you for that.
Someone else has said it would be useful to have access to records from all the libraries.
Great.
As they're specialist libraries, so the records they're interested in may not be available from the current selection that we have.
That's very useful, thank you.
And again, I had another response saying all records, because for some material low quality records it may be all that is available, and that would be better than nothing.
Lovely. Are there any other questions? Or
we'll just give it another minute here, just in case people. Is this only for academic libraries?
No. SUNCAT covers all libraries. We've got lots. Obviously, we've got lots of academic libraries, but we have all the copyright libraries as well. So we get a range of all sorts of materials, everything from the serious academic material to, you know, your Beano, 2000 AD, your comics, and your trashy mags. But we also have currently one public library, and we're always happy to have more public libraries and more FE libraries. We don't have any at the moment, but this is an area into which we want to expand. And we also obviously have our very specialist libraries. Again, the more specialist libraries to contribute, we would be very happy. So basically, we want to cover everything for everybody. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Right, so many thanks for... Oh, sorry.
Is there a way of refining search results when using Z3950 to import a record? Sometimes the list of results is overwhelming, and I wondered if there's a way of sorting or refining.
I'm not sure about that. I think that depends on the way that the Z3950 is set up. I think we'll take a note of that, and I will get back to you on that one with somebody who knows a wee bit more about Z3950.
And we're just getting thank yous in from people for the session.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on this webinar, and I hope you found it useful. So okay, I think that's probably it. Thank you. Goodbye.